Welcome to today's Top Rated Seller webinar. We're so excited you've joined us today for How to Shoot Like a Pro. We have two fantastic presenters today, both of them from eBay. First, we have Uncle Jim Griffith. Griff has been the foremost education expert on eBay since joining the company as its first customer support representative in 1996. He's traveled around America leading eBay University seminars and attending community gatherings, teaching people how to sell on eBay. eBay insider Griff tells you everything you need to know about how to become a successful online seller. Griff now works in a combination of roles at eBay, including company spokesman, educator, small business to consumer seller advocate, and general eBay Inc. counsel and advisor across many eBay North America business units. He also meets regularly with sellers both at eBay events and at seller meetup groups across the USA to gather seller insights and concerns, to answer questions, and to bring the eBay message and vision to the small eBay entrepreneur. In addition, Griff is the author of the official eBay Bible and host of eBay Radio. Our next presenter is Ken Vance. Ken has been with eBay since 1999 and has several roles including customer service, operations, planning, forecasting, and budgeting, product management, business systems design, and trust factors. Ken is currently a senior manager on the global strategy and planning team, which focuses on identifying and improving the commerce experience across the sites and working through process, product, and policy solutions to deliver an exceptional commerce experience to our community. We are blessed to have both Ken and Griff presenting to us today on how to shoot like a pro. And now for some housekeeping.
Are being recorded? Yes, this recording will be available on the Top Rated Seller Webinars YouTube channel, and a link to the recording will be sent to all of you. Will we distribute the presentation slides? Absolutely yes. We'll add the slides as a PDF on pagemage.com/Top Rated Seller Webinars. If you're having audio problems, our advice is to hang up and call back if you're on the phone. Sometimes that fixes the issue. If you're listening on computer and having a little trouble with audio, we recommend contacting us through the phone. Just hang up and call in. You'll be given a phone number and a PIN, and that usually solves any sound issues. Stay connected to the Top Rated Seller Webinars. We really covet your input. We want to stay connected with you and hear about what you want. We have a page at pagemage.com/Top Rated Seller Webinars where you can sign up for our newsletter. Stay connected again at our Facebook group. We have over 1,100 sellers and we are growing. Very active Facebook group. You can find us at facebook.com/groups/Top Rated Seller Webinars. Request to join will get you added immediately. Please remember to use the hashtag TRSW for Top Rated Seller Webinars when tweeting about our wonderful videos. Our sponsors. All of these webinars are brought to you at absolutely no cost by our wonderful sponsors. First off, we have eBay Radio, where you've got the Griff, and also Cabbage, because everybody needs a little cabbage in their business. Check cabbage.com and get started on that today. GoDaddy Online Bookkeeping, otherwise known as Outright. Put all of your accounting onto autopilot with Outright.com. And Terapeak, because we know that Terapeakers make more money on every sale. Check out Terapeak.com. PageMage, are you wanting to check out your social media? Do you want to see how you can do it better and if it's really working? Then you need Social Beacon by PageMage. Check out socialbeacon.com. We'll be getting started soon. Our next sponsor is Stamps.com. Import all of your orders from multiple marketplaces into one dashboard. Make your shipping easy, fast, and profitable with Stamps.com. And of course, we can't forget our connectors, That Cat at thatcat.com, that's me, and Karen Locker at solutionsforecommerce.com. Our next webinar is coming up soon. Sales tax tips for e-commerce sellers from Mark Fagiano, the founder of TaxJar.com. Sign up now at pagemage.com/Top Rated Seller Webinars. And we're going to have questions today, but I want to remind you that there are so many good questions out there. Today, we're going to be limiting our questions simply to the content of the webinar. So if you have questions about DSRs, feedback, all of that good stuff, save them for our Facebook group. But if you've got questions about how to shoot like a pro, this is the place to ask. Please locate your question box and type in those questions. Karen from Solutions for E-commerce will be compiling them, and we will be covering as many many as we can at the end of the presentation. We have 90 minutes, so let's get started with Griff and Ken.
So today we're going to learn how to shoot pictures like a pro. Pictures are an important part, in fact, one of the most important parts, in fact, the single most important part of your listing. It's a visual world. The web is more visual than ever, and eBay included. It's really important to have great photos. Today I'll be speaking about taking the picture part, and my colleague Ken Vance, who is a Senior Manager of Global Strategy and Planning, will be talking about policy and staying in compliance. We're going to talk about driving sales through photos, eBay's new photo standards, how to identify and fix listings at risk, and then we'll talk about the actual nuts and bolts of using a digital camera and taking great photos. So I'm going to turn this over to Ken. Hey, Ken.
Hey, Griff, thank you. And thanks to everyone for taking the time to be on the call today. And the photos will play a large role in your success as an online seller. So why are we so concerned about pictures at eBay? eBay has spent a lot of time, resources, money to know where we need to innovate to help our sellers and our site remain competitive going forward. The shopping and buying experience is becoming more visual. Buyers expect great pictures of their items and at multiple angles. And as you can see from the recent changes to the homepage, as well as the introduction of the collections feature, great pictures are important to you, to your success as a seller. So we've looked at the data. We've conducted extensive buyer research. Listings that follow our picture guidelines sell better. By not following these standards, sellers are leaving money on the table. Plus, you open yourself up to lower feedback and DSRs. But when you follow these guidelines and you add multiple pictures of your items, your listings are 3% more likely to sell. The more pictures you add, the better quality of your pictures, the more sales you'll make. Next, let's look at some examples of why pictures are important. Great pictures have a direct line to trust perceptions. It's true. If you look at these two examples, in the picture on the left, you see a lot of info about financing, promoting the seller, his friend, even his dog, while the picture on the right focuses on the actual item for sale. People are interested in the item itself, not the financing terms or other marketing in the picture. The item itself, the price that it's offered that will attract buyers to your items. Professional looking pictures increase the trust buyers have in you as a seller and in your item. And then the next slide, we'll see a few other examples that are common to eBay. Over-marketing detracts from the item, detracts from the professionalism of the site. What we hear clearly from our buyers is that they're really not interested in this type of information or this type of presentation. This is not the environment they want. Buyers want a very clean, very simple, and easy to understand transaction. The more of this marketing that's on the image, the more we muddle the conversation on what is being sold. We have heard repeatedly from our buyers that they are not interested in this type of information when looking at a picture of their item. We know that the location of the item is important information. Buyers want a consistent experience when looking at their items as well. When there's a lot of variation page to page, seller to seller, buyers will go somewhere else to shop. That is why we have structured data fields in the listing to capture important details like item location, item condition, and other item specifics that consistently display the information in the same general format for all sellers. So pictures are a great indicator of trust and a great indicator of professionalism. We'll see where commerce is going in the future. Our mobile shopping is our fastest growing segment in e-commerce. Today, about a third of all items sold on the site are touched by our mobile community somewhere in the transaction, either listed on, looked at, bid on, or paid for on a mobile device. A third of all listings are influenced by a mobile device. And if you look at this internationally, it's even bigger, like in Australia and UK. In those markets, the mobile penetration of those who shop on their mobile devices is very, very large. In order to get your items to sell well in those markets, you also need to think about how your listings look on mobile. On mobile, the photo is everything. If you as sellers are not looking at how your listings look on mobile devices, you're missing a huge opportunity. Our marketing department recently did a study and asked sellers how often they follow our best practice suggestions, and the feedback was interesting. When eBay gives them suggestions about title, pricing, item specifics, 80% of sellers follow those suggestions. In that same survey, when we asked them how often are you looking at your listings on mobile devices, one of the 4 choices was, I never look at my items on mobile devices, and 54% of sellers replied that they never look at their items on mobile devices. So we want to encourage you as sellers that called in today to please go take a look at your listings on the mobile devices, having great pictures, ensuring that they're uploaded into the eBay photo service so they're displayed appropriately and optimally on the mobile device will give you a huge advantage. Moving along, we next want to look at why we have big pictures on the site. So when you upload big pictures on our site, you're not only following our picture standards, you also take advantage of some great features we offer for free. The zoom and enlarge feature will allow buyers to zoom in, see important details, get comfortable with the item. The ability to host multiple pictures and render them quickly to your listing page. We highly recommend that sellers upload their pictures onto eBay. This cuts down on the time it takes to render the picture to your view item screen and also increases your search relevance by having better pictures on the site. We've talked to our search experts, and they have told us that picture quality counts in outside search engines, optimization, as well as within eBay. If you look at the search engines like Google and Bing or others, they're all using picture quality as a proxy for item quality, and if the item will sell well and search well in their search engines. Having great pictures, big pictures, following our picture guidelines, and having multiple pictures of your item free of marketing text is not only a benefit to you, but will also allow you to take advantage of all these features. So what are the picture guidelines we're talking about that you need to follow to increase your sales? Let's look at that. There are 5 basic standards that are part of our selling practice policy. Every listing needs to have a picture. You can see the importance of that. We're an online experience. Buyers want to see a representation of what they're going to purchase. Second, when using a catalog listings, you cannot use a stock photo as your primary photo of a used item. Buyers want to see a picture of the item they're going to buy, used items especially. And so with the used items, we don't want you to use a stock photo. And if you do, we know that you'll lose sales. Your item will sell for less. You'll expose yourself to the risk of lower feedback and DSRs. The third guideline that we have here is probably the biggest one for sellers. The biggest item they needed to change on their existing pictures is that we're requiring all pictures that are uploaded to eBay to be a minimum of 500 pixels on the longest side. Now that's just the minimum. We recommend using much larger sizes like 1,400 to 1,600 pixels on one side to take full advantage of the free features we have. You know, it's a change of mindset. File storage really isn't an issue anymore. The old mindset that you need to store small files to conserve computer resources and ensure they upload quickly is no longer relevant with today's technology. A 500 by 500 pixel picture is 0.25 megapixels. All cameras made in the last several years, plus the cameras on your phones, capture higher resolution pictures than this. Sometimes sellers run into problems when they crop their photo down too small into a smaller resolution, and Griff will talk about this more in his photo tips section. And number 4, we want your pictures to be free of marketing and seller-added text and logos and artwork. If you feel that the marketing is important to your item, then you should include that in the item description of your listing, not on the picture. And last, watermarks are okay. We understand that you want to protect the intellectual property of your photo, but those watermarks need to follow these policies above. They need to be at least 50% transparent and no bigger than 5% of the picture, and be free of all marketing. Some sellers have asked us, can they use the marketing text if they make it transparent and put it on the image like a watermark? And the answer is no. The watermark is simply to protect your image, not to share important information that needs to be in your item description. I'm going to just wrap up with a couple more slides, but I wanted to restate why we have the picture standards on eBay and what tools are available to you that will allow you to know how to optimize your listing. So again, eBay is continually researching what we need to do with our platform and how we need to partner with you, our sellers, to stay competitive and grow going forward. Better pictures is a key that's going to lead to better sales and growth. And then eBay has some tools that you can use to optimize your listing. Our bulk edit and relisting tool, or called BEAR, can be found in My eBay and Selling Manager Pro. This will give you a view of all your live listings that need to be optimized. You can edit and revise multiple listings right in this tool and upload the changes all at the same time. And this is available to every seller. You can go access it right now in My eBay. And there's a great tutorial video on YouTube. And at the end of this presentation, we'll show you this. We'll send you this deck so that you will have these links to YouTube, or you can go to the eBay channel on YouTube and search for the tutorials. Turbo Lister is also another popular listing tool that has information about picture recommendations. Just be sure to download the latest version of this tool, or if you already have it, check that you have the latest version by going to the updates field and ensuring that there's no further updates. Next, we'll look at a couple other tools I want to highlight quickly. File Exchange is another bulk listing tool where you can find information on pictures and other recommendations for your listings. It will show all your listings that are currently not compliant to our picture policy and why. Lastly, the tried and true Sell Your Item flow, which is found by clicking the Sell button on the top of eBay pages. This also offers inline guidance as you upload the pictures to eBay. Now, I'll stay on the call at the end for the extended question and answer period, but I'll pause now for a question or two before I turn the time over to Griff. Do we have any questions about why we're rolling out these picture policies at this time?
The only question I saw was talking about watermarks, and he covered that.
Great. Well, again, I'll be here at the end.
Ken, that was great information. The questions are rolling in about pictures overall, but some really good advice there about why the policies have changed. So we're ready for Griff now, and we want to make sure that Griff speaks up nice and loud. We had a couple questions about his audio, so I'll mute myself and we'll get ready.
So thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ken. Great information. I'm sure we'll get questions about the particulars towards the end. And as Ken said, he'll stay on the line, and we'll both be available to take questions. But I want to talk about the actual art of shooting pictures. And the reason I want to talk about this is because this is a topic that many of us feel that we may be inadequate, or it's a big deal and we're not photographers and we can't do it, and oh, it's overwhelming. That may be the case for a lot of us who don't know a lot about taking pictures, but here's the good news. The good news is it's actually not rocket science. It's really quite easy if you keep a few things in mind. And always use your eye. That's the advice I start out with, and it's the advice I end with. Because a lot of us don't seem to trust our eye, and your eye is really good at telling you what's good and what's not good. And although lots of us are very busy during the day, your first exercise before I ever even get started is to take time throughout your day and arrange what you're seeing. If it's, for example, a desktop full of items, what could you do to rearrange them so that it would be more pleasing to your eye? This may seem like it's not connected to this webinar. It is, because when you start taking pictures of items, you have to have that question in your mind at all times. How do I arrange my items so that they're most appealing to buyers? We're going to go through the technical stuff first. I still, after 17 years of working for eBay, get a lot of questions about this. Now, I don't pretend to be a professional photographer. At one time, I actually did pretend to be a professional photographer, and I made a little money doing it, but I had to admit to myself that my knowledge back then was quite limited, and I was learning as I went along. But there are some important things that you need to know about the technical stuff that guides how your photos are going to look. I've created a basic equipment list, and this is the base list that every eBay seller should have access to. Obviously, you need a camera, and we'll talk about what kind of camera in a minute. You need some source of lighting. You need some backdrops. You should have a tripod. You'll get much better pictures in many situations if you have a tripod. And you need a dedicated workspace in your house or your garage or basement or place of business that's dedicated solely to taking photos. Now let's talk about the camera. The most obvious one, and the one that works really well, is an inexpensive point-and-shoot camera. These are great because besides using them for your eBay business, you can also use them for your everyday photo taking. And they're usually pretty simple to use. They have a lot of automated features that don't require you to put in a lot of input about how do I set the camera to take the best photos. And in addition, they're not too expensive. Whether you buy them new or used, you can find the latest models on eBay of all places, of course. So my first recommendation for the amateur or newbie photographer is to use a point-and-shoot camera. Now, if you move up a few steps to the enthusiast consumer, a lot of us have what's called the DSLR, and this is a step up from point-and-shoot. These are digital single-lens reflex cameras. They're modeled after the old film cameras that have a mirror that flips up when the picture's being taken. That way, what you see in the viewfinder is exactly what's going to show up on the film. Now, these are great for taking photos of eBay items. I don't necessarily recommend them right out of the bat unless you own one, because they can be rather expensive. And one of the points of running a good business is to try to keep your business expenses down. So don't rush out and buy one of these unless it's on your budget plan. The last one on the list is your smartphone or tablet. Now, I couldn't say this 4 years ago or even 3 years ago because the cameras on smartphones back then, and we're showing you an iPhone, but this covers all different types of smartphones or digital tablets. The cameras that were embedded were okay, but not really great. They didn't have a lot of controls in the software for the operating system for that phone to give you the best optimal pictures. That's all changed. I know many sellers who only use their smartphone to take pictures of their items for eBay, and they get extremely beautiful shots. So if you've got an iPhone or an Android phone and it's of recent vintage, that camera and the software that's built in to control it will give you excellent photos, and you don't have to invest in either of the first two options. And also, I should mention that this goes for tablets as well. One of the benefits for tablets, especially if you're using an iPad, is that the eBay app built in for the iPad is right there, and you can actually do your entire business from taking the photos to creating the listings and uploading on your iPad. Now, you can also do this with an Android version of the tablet device, but the eBay app tends to lag a little behind, so although it's still possible to do it, the iPad is always the one that's going to have the most recent updates to the eBay app and give you the most control. I have to be honest there, so I am. But no matter what you use, your camera or your image capturing device has to have 3 specific features. And lucky for you, most every single one of these has these 3 features. So what's more important isn't that you have to ask necessarily, does this camera or smartphone have these 3 features? You need to know where they are so you can use them. Here they are. 1, you have to have some control over the flash. And specifically, I mean turning the flash off. You do not want to use your camera or smartphone or tablet's flash when you're taking pictures of items for sale on eBay. Flash is really good for taking pictures of your drunken friends at parties, but it's not very good for taking pictures of items because the harsh light tends to distort color, perspective, it flattens it out, and it makes it difficult sometimes to see details by blinding them out with hotspots. Your camera also has something called macro. Now, even most smartphones have this feature. What is macro? Well, without going into too great a depth, because it's actually a lens feature traditionally in the realm of photography, this is the ability to set your camera so that you can move it 1 inch away from an item and get a really tight close-up that's sharp and focused. Most digital cameras aren't capable of this until you actually set the camera or the smartphone to macro. And the third feature you need is either white balance or tint and temperature control. This is something I'm going to talk a little bit more about because for a lot of people who sell things on eBay, like myself, I sell clothing, the color has to be represented as accurately as possible. And if you don't understand white balance and the color temperature of light, this can make that task very difficult. So number one, flash off. Well, Griff, how do I shut the flash off? The standard icon for every digital camera or smartphone when it comes to flash is this little arrow that's downward facing. Why this is it, I have no idea, but this is the icon that was decided upon. What you need to find is the icon that shows the bar through it. So when you're setting it, if you change to this setting, your flash will be off. Sometimes that's pretty intuitive, sometimes it isn't. Oops, sorry, I'm moving back. That was a mistake, I pushed the wrong button. On this particular camera that I'm using, which is actually my Samsung smartphone, when I click on the settings for, you see the little icon on top for flash, it gives me 3 options, off, on, and also something called auto flash, which again is it's still going to be on. So I select off whenever I'm taking pictures of eBay items. Why no flash? I'm going to show you 3 examples of why no flash. Number one, it distorts and washes out the color. What color is that first item? What is that first item? I think it's a transistor radio. Very difficult to tell what the color is. Number two, it also casts very harsh shadows. If you look on the left at the handbag, you'll see the shadows behind the hand, and it makes it difficult to tell, is that a double handle, or is that the shadow, or what am I looking at? And the second thing it does is it does flatten out depth, so that if you look back at any of these photos, specifically the transistor radio, it's very difficult to tell, you know, what is the actual features on the camera, because it looks like it's almost a flat picture of it. And also those hot spots hide details. Look at the one in the middle of the ring. It's almost impossible to tell what that ring looks like. It's also a little out of focus, but that's another subject entirely. Now, macro is, again, that ability that allows you to capture very tight, focused close-ups. And here's an example of somebody using a digital camera, taking pictures of these pencils. They set their camera to macro so they can get a very tight shot, and that's what allows that to be in such good focus. Where do you find macro on your camera? The international standard icon for macro is the little tulip with 2 leaves. You'll see that button or that menu setting on your phone or smartphone, and that's where you control the macro feature. You can turn it on or off. Well then, Griff, why isn't it on all the time? When it's on, it sometimes is difficult to focus at a longer focal length. Say you're taking a picture of something that's 8 feet away. So the ability to turn it on and off is important, depending on the type of picture you're shooting. If you're shooting just close-ups, for example, then keep it on. But I've discovered when I use mine that I have to shut it off when I move back to take a picture of the entire article of clothing that I'm listing for sale on eBay. Here's another example of somebody using a camera, this was me, using the camera and not setting the macro. And this is a common type of error you see on eBay, a blurry photograph. And if the person taking the picture is anything like me, they're probably pulling their hair out saying, why doesn't this darn camera that I spent $300 take a sharp picture? Because I haven't set the macro. When I go back in, and this is how far away the lens is, by the way, when I go in and turn the macro on for the feature itself, I get a much sharper image because the camera lens can now focus properly. Again, you'll find your macro settings in different places depending on your camera. I've used the camera here and not the smartphone. On my smartphone, that's like the middle screen, there's a little tulip icon that I press and then I can set it off or on. On these cameras, it's either a button or a menu option on the screen. Look in your camera manual or phone manual if you're not sure where macro is. This is a very important feature for sellers on eBay, and you want to know where it is on your device and how to control it. And then the third thing I talked about is white balance. This is so important. White balance is basically balancing the camera for the temperature of light that's being used at the moment to illuminate an item that you're photographing. In this particular instance, I'm showing you one photograph that was taken over and over with different white balance settings. And you can see that a simple shirt can either have a yellow cast, a green cast, or a pink cast, depending on the white balance. Now, what is the actual color of this shirt? I don't know. I took this from the internet. Who knows? But I can tell you, if I put all of those photos up on an eBay listing, the buyer is going to be very confused about what they're getting. That's why white balance is so important. Here's another example of a white balance that wasn't balanced properly. And what happens in the close-up is you get a photograph that looks a bit maybe black or charcoal. And when I pull away and take a picture of the shirt, it looks very purple. So the question is, which is the right color? And this is a question that you never want your buyer asking. What's the right color of this item? Here's the same shirt, one of the shirts that I had for sale a while back, with 3 different light temperature settings. This is the shirt, here it is again, and here it is again. This really highlights the differences in color that you get depending on the type of light you're using and your camera setting. Now in this case, the middle one I used flash, and you can see what it does to the color. It actually flattens it out. But is this a gray or a blue shirt or a lavender shirt? Well, I don't know if I'm the buyer, and I'm going to be very confused when I'm trying to purchase it. Let's talk about light temperature before we go back and look at some more photos. The temperature of light depends on its mix. And if you remember from your science classes in high school, white light, for example, from the sun, is a mix of different wavelengths. We're showing them here in a scale based on a temperature rating that's called Kelvin. So you get different qualities of light the lower and higher that Kelvin temperature is. I know this sounds like a science class, and I'll try to get through it real quick because a lot of people find this dull. I find this very exciting, though, because it was really an eye-opener to me when I first started reading about it. Now, if you look at the bottom of the scale, you see how the light has a very high reddish tint, and it's also the lowest temperature. For example, candlelight is usually somewhere around 1800 Kelvin, and that has a very reddish tint, or a sunrise or sunset has a very reddish tint. If you go all the way up to the top, which is daylight with diffused clouds, you're around 7,000 Kelvin. So you see there's a wide range in there. And then I've indicated what daylight naturally is, usually not looking at the blue sky. What a fluorescent light is normally rated at, a tungsten, and incandescent. And you see that they're rated for different temperatures. Well, this is important because your eye actually sees these, whether you know it or not. But the camera really sees it. And the camera sensor is very sensitive to these light temperatures and will relay the information back to the recording device through its processor and the camera, depending on the temperature of light that comes in. Knowing this, what film cameras didn't have and digital cameras do have is something called a white balance control that you can set so you can best match the temperature of the light in which you're shooting your item. That's basically it. A few rules of thumb. When you mix different light sources, it's very difficult for your camera to tell what is the proper temperature. So my first bit of advice is to always use consistent light. If you are, for example, say that you are kind of on a budget, or you live in an area where there's no electricity and you're using candlelight to light your items for sale on eBay, great. Just make sure that's all you use because you want it to be consistently at 1800K. Now that's a bit of a joke because I think most of us aren't going to rely on candles to light our items for eBay. My advice is to have something closer to daylight. In my experience with trying different light sources, the daylight range, which is around 5,500 to 6,000 Kelvin, will give you the most control and the best results from your digital camera or smartphone. But what you have to do is you have to be consistent. So in my garage space that I use for taking photos, I have it blacked out so that when there's no light, it's black. And when I turn on my lights, which I'll show you in a minute, they're consistently 55 or 5600K using light bulbs, compact fluorescent light bulbs I bought on eBay. That way it's easy for my camera to actually give me the right color. Sometimes I have to make minor adjustments to the camera's white balance. So I'm focusing in on that particular aspect of our scale. Now, here's what I use. It's called a compact fluorescent. You can buy these on eBay. You can buy them in hardware stores. I find you get a better range online, and I love shopping on eBay, and I get great deals on these. I need 8 of them at any given time, and I'll show you why in a moment. So I always have 8, in a few at least, on reserve in case one of them burns out, so that I always have enough strong light. And again, these are all rated at the same Kelvin temperature. In this case, you can have 4 100-watt, 500K compact fluorescent bulbs to use in your softbox, which I'll show you in a moment. Here it is. This is exactly what I use for taking my photos. The only thing that's missing from the picture to show you the light bulbs is there's a translucent piece of fabric that goes on the front of this to diffuse the light so it's not harsh. I have 2 of these setups. I bought them on eBay for under $200. You can find great deals for these. This is a wise investment for anyone who sells regularly on eBay. They're easy to control, easy to set up and take down, easy to move around, and they'll give you the best lighting bang for your buck. Now, what was the actual color of this shirt? So the first was a white balance setting that was too cool. I then tried one with flash, and then I tried a white balance that ended up being too warm. In all of these cases, I was also utilizing ambient sunlight coming through the room. I took the shirt into my garage, placed it in front of a black background with no other light but the light from my fluorescent, compact fluorescent lights, and was able to adjust it so that I got the exact color of the shirt, which is a kind of blue, a grayish blue, unlike any of the pictures to the left. Oh, by the way, I should tell you, I sold the shirt. The buyer was happy. Great end of the story. Where do you find white balance settings in your camera? Well, on the left is on my cell phone. It shows AWB. You can set your white balance in most situations to be automatic. And what that does is the sensor determines the light coming in and then sets it appropriately. Worth trying for most situations. Take a few test shots with your camera or cell phone set to automatic white balance and see what the results are. Again, remember my first advice. Use your eye. Trust your eye. It will not lie to you. Don't ignore what your eye says. If you see a difference, there's a difference. Don't settle for it. Try something else. On my camera, the settings are very basic on the left. There's daylight, cloudy shade, tungsten, fluorescent flash, and custom. Now, for custom, you can usually set a few options, like maybe there's a few temperature options. Try them all. Learn what they do. People are so afraid to try the different things on their cameras and computers and devices. It's like they think they're going to break something. You're not going to break something. You're going to learn something, and that's always fun. Now, on my right-hand side here, I'm showing you the white balance for the camera that I normally use. And what it has on this one that I love is at the last setting, there's a K with a number. And if I select that option, I can change the Kelvin temperature from something like 2,000 up to 8,000. And then I can adjust that looking as I go, so I make sure that the color is matching in the viewfinder exactly what I'm seeing with my eye, so that I know when I take the photo, the color is going to be exactly what the buyer sees. And you're not going to get complaints from people saying, well, I thought I was buying a lavender shirt, and it turns out it's blue, or something else to that equivalent. Now, in your smartphone, sometimes you don't have the same range. So in my smartphone, all I had was an automatic white balance, daylight, cloudy, incandescent, and fluorescent. So I have to play with that sometimes. It's one of the reasons why, personally, I prefer to use my camera, because color is so important in the items that I sell. Color may not be that important for some of the things that you sell, and you may find that your phone or tablet, the controls for white balance are working for you. So the only way you'll know is to test them all. Don't be afraid. Do some test shots. You're not going to waste any film or money, because there isn't any. It's just a way of learning how to use your phone. Now, if you're not sure where the white balance is on your camera, and if you've taken webinars or classes with me in the past, you know I'm a big believer in manuals. That's that thing that comes with a device that most of us put in a drawer without ever opening. you really should take some time to read it, if not in its entirety, because quite frankly, manuals can be very dull. But knowing where it is and knowing how to reference it will come in handy for you in the future. I have several cameras. I'm no expert. They continually flummox me. I think I know a little bit about some of them, but I always have the manuals available so that I can open them and figure out, I can't get this camera to do what I want. Does the manual tell me? Read your manual. You'll know I use this a lot if you email me about cameras and things. Now, lighting. Lighting is so important. And here is my one tip. Diffuse, artificial, single temperature light sources. They will give you the best results. That means if you're shooting in a room and it has open windows and you're using incandescent lights, you're going to find it hard to get a consistent color and effect. The way you control it is to be the master of everything, including your light sources. So block those windows up and use consistent light sources. I'm using those compact fluorescents. You can use incandescent lights with something that diffuses them, as long as they're the same temperature. If it's consistent, then you can set your camera accordingly and you'll get good results. Here's what some people use. This is a light cube, and this is another setup that you'll find with 3 different lamps. These happen to have complex fluorescence. I'm assuming they're all the same temperature. And the fabric of the light cube does the diffusing, so you're not getting harsh light. In this particular case, it's a background. You can buy these as kits, and a lot of times they'll come with different backgrounds. This is very good for small items. It's not necessarily very effective for bigger items. But if you sell things like jewelry or handcrafts or small toys or small objects, this is a great setup. Now, for those of us who have a bigger setup, you can find something like this. Same idea, just a lot more light. And the diffusing is going on by the front of these. That's why they call soft boxes, because the material used in the outside of the lamp is soft. It's fabric that's been reinforced in the back with some metal spines like an umbrella. I find that 2 work well. 3 can work even better. That gives you 3 light sources that are washing against each other. Again, you can find these as kits on eBay for very little money. Know what you're buying. Some of these are very cheap because they only have 1 socket lights in them. That may be okay for you. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but if you want more light to illuminate, the more sockets inside of these, the better. So make sure that you're looking at the specifics, item specifics for these particular items on eBay if you're thinking of purchasing them. Oh, Griff, I don't have any money right now. I know, you're just getting started. Business expenses, you should keep them low. Don't invest in one of these right off if you can get away with using household stuff. Like I said before, just several incandescent lamps with some sort of lampshade on them that diffuses the light should give you a pretty good effect. Maybe not the best, but certainly good enough to get by until you've made enough sales where you can invest a little bit more in your business. Backdrops are very, very important. And in fact, this is one of the most embarrassing things outside of unfocused photos on eBay that you'll see. And that's people who take a picture of their items in very unprofessional settings, like on a kitchen table where in the background you can see that they haven't done their dishes and there's the baby in the high chair. And does that sink need cleaning? And what's up with all that stuff on the other side of the kitchen table? Very unprofessional. You only want to focus and show and display your item for sale. And the way you can do this by blocking off everything else is just use a simple backdrop. On the left, you'll see another kind of kit you can buy on eBay. I don't recommend this starting right off. Again, watch your expenses. Don't spend a lot of money. On the right is a roll of paper that you can buy. It's called studio paper on eBay. You don't even need to buy that right off. Go find a white or black sheet, a bed sheet, or a piece of fabric. You can go to Joann's or one of the other fabric stores and just buy a couple yards of white muslin or white cotton fabric. It'll do the job. What you need is a smooth background. Sometimes you might have to iron it to make it look a little more professional. White poster board will do the same thing. You want to create a seamless background so that you're only looking at the item. Okay. You can find backdrops on eBay. I use this all the time. I love this particular one because it's like a velour like a velvet, and it really absorbs the light, so it gives you a flat black background, which is great for light-colored items that really makes them pop, like this bouquet of flowers here. I mentioned before that you'll need a tripod. You will need a tripod. If you can't afford one right off, you can find them on eBay for about 20 bucks. You can also see them in thrift stores occasionally. One word of caution, make sure that the tripod in a thrift store or an estate sale has the little device on top that connects to the camera. If it's missing, the tripod is worthless. If you can't afford a tripod, use the back of a chair to balance the camera or steady the camera when you take a photo. Even the slightest motion can sometimes cause a blurred photo, and that's what you want to avoid. And I talked about dedicated workspaces. Here's two examples. Now, one is admittedly rather big. It looks like it's in a loft. Not all of us live in a space where we have that much space to dedicate. On the right is a smaller space, something that could be easy to take apart if needed, but hopefully something you can keep up and is not something you have to waste time taking apart and putting it back together. These will help you make your photos more professional looking, and you'll feel more professional having a dedicated workspace. Here's an example of a workspace we all wish we had. That is the biggest softbox I've ever seen in my life. It's the length of 3 cars. And believe it or not, this is how people take pictures, professional photos of really cool cars. Basically what you're doing in your garage by my recommendations, only slightly more scale. Pretty impressive. Wouldn't you love to own that? I searched eBay. I couldn't find any examples of that one. It's bigger than my house. So let's review. You need the right camera. It could be a point and shoot, a DSLR, or a smartphone or tablet. The 3 camera features that are really important are the flash, turn it off for taking pictures of eBay items, your macro and white balance. Macro will get you tight, focused, sharp, close-up images. And that's important, for example, if you want to show things like a maker's mark, a signature, a condition, like a chip or a crack. I use it a lot when I sell shirts because I like to show the weave of some of the shirts. It gives people a better idea of what they're buying. And number 3, the white balance, so that you have control over the color and the tint of your photos so that you're providing your buyers with accurate renditions of your items and not a surprise when they open the box. Lighting is important. I recommend soft boxes. Use whatever you have around the house. Light cubes are fantastic as well. Backdrops, white or black, will do the trick. I know people use color sometimes. I'm hesitant to do so. When you introduce a color background, you introduce questions of contrast, which could be very nice and sometimes not so nice. Your best default are white or black. And of course, you would use a white backdrop for something that's dark colored, and you'd use a black backdrop for something that is light colored. That seems to make sense. It's also important, and I didn't mention this too much before, that they're non-reflective. Now, with white backdrops, you don't have to worry about that. But with black backdrops, if you're using a black paper, for example, that can send some light back, reflect some light back into the camera, which can cause maybe sometimes some pleasing effects, maybe not. So I like to use backdrops when they're dark-colored or black that are non-reflective. It's why I love those velveteen or velour backdrops that you can buy on eBay. And a tripod, so expensive. Even the steadiest among us, and who amongst us isn't steady? Every time your heart beats and your pulse races, your can moves, even so slightly, and it can be when the shutter's actually firing, and you're not going to get a sharp picture. And of course, a dedicated workspace. You got a kid who's going out to college soon, hurry him out the door and take over his room. That's my advice. One more thing before we go, and this will be rather quick. I want to talk a little bit about the art of seeing. And here's some tips and exercise. I made this point in the beginning. Understanding the technical aspects of a camera or a smartphone are really important to getting good shots. Understanding how your eye sees the world is even more important. And I'm always surprised how people seem to be timid or afraid to actually exercise their vision. Here's some things I recommend. Look. Look at everything. So many of us go through our day. Unfortunately, today, actually, I see a lot of people, my colleagues included, who spend a lot of time staring into their smartphones. Look at the world around you. Take time to compose in your eye what you're looking at. Right now, it's a fun thing to do because where we are, the trees are turning. What does this have to do with eBay photos? It has everything to do with eBay photos. You'd be surprised how your eye over time, if you train it and you look at what it's trying to tell you, you'll get ideas about arranging items in their most pleasing manner so that you can get great photos. Most people do not see things properly when they're taking photos. For example, this is a sale on eBay. What color is this shirt? Is it yellow or gray? It's very difficult to tell. They use two different light sources. They've got it would be impossible for me to know what I'm getting when I buy this shirt. Here's some eBay gallery images I saw. This is the gallery image for a shirt that's for sale. Well, I know it's new in packaging, but what the heck is it? And you notice that in the packaging, it's very hard to see the photo itself. So I would never have used this as a first photo. I would try to take it out of the packaging if possible to show the item itself. Another photo that I think used flash, it's very hard to tell. There's actually something almost ethereal about this photo, like it's a ghost shot of a shirt or something. And by the way, I like shirts, so I'm using those as examples. Here's another one. This is, again, a use of flash, hard to tell the color. Not hard to tell where it's photographed against a closet door. Looked at better than most, still not very professional. If you need to photograph against a white wall or a closet door, hey, go ahead. But use your eye and, if necessary, the camera and, if necessary, software to crop out stuff we don't need to see. For example, the deadbolt and the doorknob. And you could have cropped out most of the hanger, which is what I use hangers when I'm photographing my items, but I crop them out at the top so they're not so obvious. Because this looks like, it just doesn't look very professional. I'll try to be kind. Train your eye to see colors. Not always, but sometimes will carry Pantone color chips with me and try to match up what I'm seeing with an actual color on a chip. And this is 3 examples of doing that. Well, what good is this, Griff? The eye actually can see, the human eye can tell over 1 million variations of color. This is a medical, scientifically proven fact. But it doesn't mean that we in our brain actually pay attention to that. It's very important to be discerning about color, and this is one way of doing it. And always be framing. You know those people who think they're film directors and they're looking at a scene and they're using their hands to frame? Well, I know that can be pretentious looking, but when you're actually looking, I've got my wristwatch off right now, and I'm putting it on the table. Think, what's the best way I can present this wristwatch so it's going to take a good photo? Just don't throw it on a table and take a picture. Frame it, move it around. Try different setups until you get one that looks most pleasing. If you're not at home taking pictures, and you don't want to be pretentious looking, don't use your fingers, but always be looking around you and framing the things you see. And how would you crop this view that you're looking at now? One of the things about cropping that a lot of people don't do, and is very important, is just use your camera or your smartphone. So in the scene on the left is a typical mistake where the item being photographed is photographed in such a way that you see most of the background. Now it's in a light cube, but it's very hard to see what it is. If I move the camera closer or use the camera zoom feature, I can fill the viewfinder with most of the item. Now I'm going to get a sharp picture, and I won't have to do much, if any, cropping afterwards. This is always a very efficient way to frame and crop pictures right in the camera or your device. Don't be afraid to use the zoom. Don't be afraid to move forward or backward. You notice it's on a tripod, so I just have to move the item, the tripod closer or farther away to get it so it fills the viewfinder without spilling outside of the frame. And I research the pros. So one of the things that I do, because I sell men's shirts, is I'm constantly looking at the way that retail sites display their wares in their catalogs or on their website. I love the Territory Ahead. By the way, if you're thrifters and you're out searching for shirts, this is a underappreciated brand. If you see a Territory Ahead shirt for $3 or so, buy it. You're going to find buyers on eBay, and I'm happy to give you that tip. Even if we're sharing the same thrift store, you should be trying to compete with me because I'm getting 2 good deals on these shirts. So I use their examples when I'm taking photos of my shirts to see how I should be picturing them. And also it's a great way for me to tell what's hot right now. This is beyond photos itself, but remember that retail sites spend a lot of money marketing and determining what's going to be the hot items for this season. You don't have to spend any money. You just buy their catalogs, and you're taking advantage of their marketing so that you can be looking for similar items. It's a great way of piggybacking on their marketing efforts. So experiment, try different backgrounds, try different light source positions, keep moving things around, change your camera settings, change the depth of field, zoom in or out, all of these until you get the ideal shot. Never settle for okay. Always be striving for better and best. And trust your eyes. Now look at that for a moment. Man, that doesn't make sense. Okay, so maybe don't always trust your eyes, but when it comes to item photographs, don't just settle for okay or worse. Always be looking. Always be improving. Always be improving. This is myself included. This is an example of a shirt photograph that I wasn't happy with, and I kept taking it over and over until I got it just the way I wanted it. Always be improving. So thank you. I guess that concludes the presentation part of our webinar today, and now it's time for your questions.
Lots and lots of questions.
Yeah, I'm a good 10 minutes behind in the questions, meaning that they were scrolling in faster. So, Kat, if you can start watching around the time 151 is where I got kind of lost. And I'm going to go backwards because I think some of the early questions, Griff, they were asking before you even came on and did your presentation, so you may have covered them, but I'll scan through them. But I'll start with these later ones.
Okay.
Any suggestions for taking pictures of a mirror? The background is always a problem.
Yes, and any reflective surface, that's always a bit of a challenge. If it's a flat surface like a mirror, you don't want to be in the picture. So there's several different things you can do. One of them is you can sometimes angle the mirror so that you're not in the picture, but that doesn't give you a head-on shot. My recommendation is to make sure that what's in front of the mirror behind you is as nondescript as possible. So if it's a white wall or preferably a dark colored wall, this is going to make it easier to do the next step. Because the next step is to set your camera on a tripod, set the timer on your camera to take the shot, and set it for 5 or 10 seconds. You click the shutter, you move out of the shot, and the only thing that's going to show up is the tripod. Now, you can actually hang a black backdrop behind you, and sometimes this will make everything disappear except the tripod, and usually that's not so much, it's not going to be that distracting. Some people with a little bit of photoshopping can kind of blur it out. That's another thing you can do. But always try to figure out how to take the most important annoyance out of the photo, and that's you. You don't want to have yourself showing up. So it's much better to just have the camera on a tripod. Sometimes you really want nothing else showing. I've done this with small items. I've placed the camera behind a black backdrop or white, usually black, and I'll have a little hole for the lens, and it's very easy to take that shot, and it's very difficult to see anything in the mirror but, you know, a nondescript black background.
Right, and I know I have one of those small pop-up kits that actually has a screen that you just put the camera through, so that works to do that too. Okay, here's one talking about backgrounds. What's the best way to remove backgrounds from the picture so you see the item only, and is it easy to do?
Well, I assume that they're talking about software, and it's easy to do if you have expensive software, but there's a learning curve. So I know there's a lot of people, myself included, I've done this, for example, with big oriental rugs, where it's really hard to get a solid background in real life, where you can mask out the background using software. It's never easy the first time. It involves steps learning how to use the software like Photoshop. Most inexpensive software does not have the ability to do this correctly. So my advice is, whenever possible, is to use a physical backdrop to avoid having to resort to software. That being said, if you do have a copy of expensive software or robust software that allows for removal and replacement of backgrounds, then read up in the software's manual or search on Google for tutorials on how to do things. That's how I learned, by the way. Is I went online and I typed Photoshop, because I had a copy of it. Photoshop remove background. and I found great tutorials on the internet that showed me step by step how to do this, because sometimes there's different, more than one way to do it.
There are a couple of inexpensive ones too, Griff, free software that people have started using that do an okay job. I know
Sure, what are they?
And Bling It. Both of those because
Bling It, yeah.
Yeah, because it highlights the thing. So I mean, I've used both of those. They don't do a great job on the edges. You're always going to get some bleed, but you know, if you don't want to do an expensive or take the learning curve for Photoshop or GIMP, they work pretty good.
And there are also services that you can hire now, Griff, for as low as like 25 cents a photo if you really want it done.
Oh, well, I didn't know that. That's a great option as well.
Yeah.
But of course, the easiest way, I'm sure you'll agree with me, is if you can get away with it, use a physical background.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, it's so much easier to just have it eliminated before you start. This is another question. When you use macro, do you use zoom for close-ups?
You can. Some cameras will do that. So there's some cameras that will allow you to use macro and zoom. Most point-and-shoot digital cameras require you to be in widest angle before macro kicks in. So it won't be possible to use both on point-and-shoot. The original macro feature for film camera was the macro lens. And the interesting thing is that most of these macro lenses are either extreme wide angle or zoom lenses that have this ability. But for most point-and-shoot cameras, where the macro feature is built into the processing, you can't use zoom and macro at the same time. You have to use one or the other.
Okay. This question's been asked a couple of times, so I just want to get clarification out there. For your backdrops for eBay for your photos, a lot of people are getting the impression that they can only have white. Is black also an option? Okay.
You can use any color you want.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know how that rumor got started. We've done a lot here when it's come up to actually dispel it. Let me disabuse anyone of the notion that they have to use black or white. You can use whatever color you want. You can use whatever background you want. You can use your kitchen sink and all the dirty dishes. You're not going to get a high-quality image, and you may not get a good boost in search. But you can do whatever you want when it comes to backgrounds.
Great. I'm glad you got that out there, Griff, because there's a variation of that question, too, I'm sure Karen has. It says, is eBay moving towards a white background because some of the competition is? So right now, any solid background is good, but are we moving in that direction? It was the other question.
No, and I'd be very, very hesitant to think that we ever would, because white backgrounds aren't always appropriate.
Thank you.
I'm selling a white shirt. I want a black background.
Yeah, I know somebody who has a white background and they have something and it's got white in the center, so the center just kind of disappears into the background.
Yeah.
Makes it really tough.
Yeah, that's not true on eBay, and I don't foresee that ever being true.
Okay, and it doesn't even have to be a solid background, Kat. It can be any background. You just want a high-quality picture. You want a solid. Would you say that's true, Griff?
I would say that's pretty much on the money, yes.
Okay. Now this person, how do you know if you must increase or decrease the white balance? She adjusted the white balance on a dark purple shirt until it looked perfect. Took the picture and the shirt looked blue. Was the picture the right color, but the computer color was off, or what did they do wrong?
Well, it could be that it depends on her monitor. Her monitor may need to be adjusted. It could depend on her camera. Now, the least expensive cameras, sometimes their LCDs don't show you exactly the information that's going to be stored on the card when you're for the color of the item. If you're seeing an inconsistency, you may have to readjust for your camera. This could be difficult because it means you're going to have to be making guesses, or you need a new camera or computer. Now, I use people ask me what camera I use. I use a Panasonic Lumix DXL5. I use it for everything now when I'm taking pictures of friends, out taking pictures of landscape, and it works really well for taking pictures of eBay items because I love the white balance control it gives me. If my camera wasn't giving me the effects that I needed for white balance, I would look for another camera.
Or maybe she could look at it on her phone as well to see.
Yeah, if you have more, that's a great advice. That was Tara speaking. Great advice, Tara. If you have more than one device, do a comparison. It'll tell you if it's good on your phone and not good on the camera, and when you move both pictures to your computer, the one from your phone looks more accurate than the one from your camera, then your camera is the culprit.
That's a great thought. Okay, you talked about a bit reflective. Sorry, I'm echoing here. You talked about reflective things. So another question was TVs, tablets, phones, and things like that. An easy way to deal with the reflectiveness on those.
Well, there is a very easy way, but you have to invest in something. So what a lot of people do are they buy those screen protector films. If you place a sheet that's cut exactly to the surface of either the laptop screen or the phone screen of this film, it will dull just enough the reflection so that you can get a pretty good photo. The other thing, again, is to remember the rule about reflective surfaces. If you have the item facing the camera and behind the camera is a very consistent background. For example, in this case, it can be white, black, it can be anything. As long as it's consistent, then you're not, and your light sources are diffused and not pointed directly at the item, then you should be able to position that phone screen in a way where you can take a photo with no reflection. But it does take experimentation. And this is a great question because this particular situation is one that does require experimentation on the part of the photographer. And that means being willing to try different positions, moving the light around, trying different light sources, and keeping in mind the important rule, which was the flat surface of the screen needs to be parallel to a flat surface that is consistently one color with no variations, and that will help give you a screen that isn't showing a reflection.
Great answer. Thanks, Griff. Another question, and this gets confusing. There's resolution and there's pixels. So somebody's asking, what about resolution for when they take their pictures?
So they're kind of the same thing in the camera. When you've opened up or you've gone into the settings for your camera or smartphone, there'll be, and it's not, this is the difficult part because it's not standardized. Some say image quality, some say image size. Resolution in this particular instance means the number of pixels wide by the number of pixels high. That's what the resolution is. The more pixels on each of those axes, the higher the resolution. One of the things we recommend and we have is this minimum baseline that's acceptable, which is 500 pixels on one side. That may be the minimum acceptable. It's definitely too small for a high-quality image. So my recommendation is to have something that's at least 1,600 pixels on either side or more. Sometimes I've uploaded very successfully images that have 22 by 3,200 pixels. eBay will compress them down, but keep a rule of thumb in mind. It's much easier to maintain great image quality when eBay is reducing an image. It's impossible to maintain image quality when you're taking an image in its native size and then trying to make it bigger. Mm-hmm. It will always pixelate. It will always look blurry. So a lot of people, I think, mistakenly took the 500 pixel as our recommendation for the right size. It's the minimum. It's the at least size. You really want to make sure your image is actually bigger. For old timers on eBay, this is kind of a complete about face, because in the old days we had to, because we've always been frugal with server space, we said not only are we charging you $10 a picture, but don't make them too big because we'll kick them out. It's completely changed at eBay. Now not only are pictures free for 12 photos, but the bigger the better, up to a point. I mean, you don't want something that is 9,000 by 9,000 pixels. That's going to be way too big. But my recommendation is for a base minimum for quality is 1,600 pixels on either side.
Great answer. I know Karen's got all these questions, but there's one that came in later from our friend Beth. She's asking about DPI, which you just addressed. However, her question is about using a scanner, because there's some items like baseball cards and books and such that she likes to use her scanner for. I know some of our sellers use that. So she says it used to be that they recommended 72 DPI, but she knows as you go larger with these images, you need a higher DPI. So do you have a suggested resolution for those using scanners for their eBay photos, Griff?
Yeah, and let me point out the difference between pixels and DPI. Pixels are how a computer screen the camera's LCD, the smartphone, any other device that uses a screen to represent the item, pixels are important. DPI is for printing. So DPI stands for dots per inch, and for a inkjet printer, it's how many little drops of ink are going to be used per inch. The higher that number, the better the quality of the print. Now with scanners, DPI is also usually how they indicate resolution instead of with pixels. Some use pixels, most use DPI. So in this one particular case, when you have a scanner, that's your resolution metric. You want to make sure that it's at least 150, not 72.
Okay. That's good. That answers a couple of questions that we had. And I remember I had a camera, one of my old cameras. It took big pictures, but its DPI was always 75, and that was always confusing between the DPI and the size.
So what happens in a case like that, Karen, is if you have a photo that's, let's say, 1,000.
Did I lose Griff, or did we all lose Griff?
We lost Griff.
I'm here, yes.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, I guess I want to make sure that doesn't happen again. So what I was talking about was DPI for printing, and I was using an example. If you have a 1,000 by 1,000 square image and it prints out at around 5 by 5 inches, the DPI at 72 or 78 or 75 is going to be less sharp than a DPI of 150 in the print. In the actual visual that you're looking at on your computer screen, you won't notice a difference at all.
Okay. Somebody wants to know if you know where they can find their white balance settings, tried to say that too fast, on a Canon camera.
Yeah, it depends on the type of Canon camera. The least expensive usually don't have much in the way of manual options for control, but if you go into your menu settings and you scan through the different settings, you should come across something called white balance. If it's a very basic point and shoot, it may be called something like tint or hue. Again, consult your camera's manual to find out exactly where you find it.
Okay.
Read the manual. We always say RTM. You know about that, right?
Yeah.
RTM. And then if somebody keeps asking me the same question over and over, I oftentimes have said RTFM. And we won't even go what that means.
Well, what's funny is a lot of stuff doesn't come with manuals now, but you can find them all online.
You can download the manual for almost every device from that manufacturer's support website.
Exactly. A friend of mine had me do it and print it, all 350 pages. She needed the physical manual. Here's another question for you. Color is affected differently by everyone's computer screen. So how do you handle that? You know it looks this color.
Right. You can't control it. You can't control what the buyer is using to view the item. But I will say this. This was a much bigger problem in the old days of CTRs, CRTs, I mean, capital grade 2 manual monitors, where, the settings, the Gaussian settings, as they were called, could result in different color tints. That's not the case anymore. Nearly every new device is very accurate in displaying color, much more accurate than before. So I would not worry about the viewer's machine and what they're saying. Focus on making sure that the image you're taking is an accurate representation of the color of the item in real life. Everything takes care of itself. I sell very different colored shirts. I've only had one instance where someone said, this doesn't really look like the right color, and I got to be honest with you, it was my fault. When I went back and looked at the color, I should have been editing it with the image in front of me because it was definitely a shade or two off. So in that case, it was my error and not the buyer's. And I gave him a full refund. I told him to keep the shirt and redonate it. He bought something else from me, so it all worked out.
Cool. Somebody is asking for hints on photographing reds. Their oranges and reds never look right.
Yeah. Could be difficult with red is one of the most difficult colors because I find red and certain shades of light blue to be very hard, it could be a number of reasons. Everything again depends on the consistency of light. If you're following the steps that I mentioned before, which is to make sure that the light illuminating the item is consistently one temperature color, it'll be a lot easier to get a rendition of the actual color of the shirt. That being said, even with the right consistency of temperature of light, some cameras still have a hard time getting red to represent. What I do in my Panasonic camera is I will raise or lower while I'm viewing the item. I can raise or lower the temperature in Kelvin till I get a better representation of the red. That sometimes takes care of it. The other thing I've noticed, and this is just a bizarre thing about sensors and cameras, is if you're shooting against a light-colored background, try a darker colored background. Maybe not necessarily black right off, but sometimes the contrast between the background and the actual color that you're photographing will help you get a better rendition, representation, more accurate representation of the actual color. Again, what's the key word here? Experiment. Don't settle for less. Take the time, make some changes, and don't settle for less until you get the right color.
Good advice. Somebody wanted to know, what about just using the auto settings on their camera?
If they work, and in some cameras and for some situations, they work really fine. If you're shooting things like electronics or maybe collectibles, you'll find that color, if it's slightly off, is not going to make a big difference. I always try the automatic settings for my camera or phone whenever I'm taking a picture as the first experiment. If it's going to work with the auto settings, I'm going to go with it. If it doesn't work, then I'll move to manual. But yeah, try them. Again, the proof is in the pudding. Always compare the results with the actual item and ask yourself, would you settle for this as a buyer? Would this confuse you, or would this inform you as a buyer? And if the answer is no, start over.
Okay. Talking about light boxes for a minute here. What's your impression of the studio in the box that's the collapsible with the lights and the backdrops?
I think for small items, they're fine. I've never seen a setup that can't be used with some effectiveness. Some of them they're low light, so you have to set your camera accordingly. And that's what's cool about a tripod and a digital camera, is if the light isn't very strong in wattage, you can usually get away with a slower shutter speed. The camera on its auto settings will usually do that as long as it's on a tripod. Now, there is a point with low light where with some digital cameras you get what's called noise, and that's a blurriness in the actual pixels in the background. For taking pictures of items, that's usually not a problem, but if the light is too low, it will be. You'll get a grainy look to the photo. In order to avoid that noise, you want to have at least sufficient lighting. Some of the light cube setups come with very minimal lights. You can always add extra if you want.
And since you're talking about graininess, we had this question a couple of different times, and it goes back to the scanners. Since you went to the minimum of 500 pixels on one side, their trading card pictures look very grainy. Prior to this, they had no problem. And then it says they use a good Canon scanner, but the larger pixel requirement makes the scans look unshared and grainy.
Yeah, they need to increase the DPI on the scanner. If they're having a problem with that, consult the manual for the scanner itself. It's going to tell you how to do this. Because what you're doing is you're taking at a certain pixel size, but you're not increasing. The scanner works differently than a camera, and that's why scanners have that DPI rating. Even though you're not going to print it out, increase the DPI, you'll get a better picture.
And when you were talking earlier, too, about people that they took the older photos and then just made them bigger, that would be another reason why you would get graininess, correct?
You would get pixelation. So graininess means you're not getting enough information in the pixels to give you a real sharp photo from a scan. Taking a picture at its native size and then trying to make it bigger by saying increase the image size is going to cause pixelation. Pixelation is, you know, that effect that you'll see sometimes on television when they don't want you to see something in a video, and so they kind of take an area, not blacken it out, but they make it pixelated so that it's hard to see what it is, like a person's face who may be in the witness protection program. Who knows?
Okay. There was a question about cropping software, and how do you know you're at 500 on the longest side when you're cropping?
Yeah, all software will have something on the menu bar under Image or Edit that is called image size. And image size is meant to change the image size, but it'll most importantly for this case, it'll tell you what the image size is. So say you have a big picture, it needs some cropping, you crop it, you want to know if it's still the right size, it's not below 500 minimum. You go up to the menu bar, click on Image or Edit. Some of the programs it's different where it is. Look for image size, it'll open up a dialog box, it'll show you the pixel dimensions of now the cropped item. If it's too small, either go back and retake the picture or increase decrease the amount you're cropping. If you're cropping, then there's probably a good reason. And if you're at that borderline where you're below or just at 500 pixels, go back and retake the photo. You took it too small or the camera was too far away from the item. Remember, as I said in the presentation, it's best to crop while you're taking the photo, then you won't have to worry about this later.
This question might be for Ken. How do we report?
Thankfully.
How do we report competitors that aren't complying with the new picture standards?
Sure. When you see any seller on the site that's not following one of our policies, there's a report this item link. It's right about what we call the fold, so right below the seller information, right before the item specific start, towards the right side of the view item page. If you click on there, you can go through and it'll ask you what's wrong with it, and if you choose listing policy, problem with picture, and then it'll give you a couple options of what you want to report it for.
Okay, and I'll stay on this vein, Griff, and give your voice a break for a minute. Another one is this person was saying, I have to find it, that they've noticed a drastic decrease in sales as of late. Most of our pictures have marketing and extra info on it. Could it be our search rankings are being affected due to these images? But they've noticed better sales with our marketing images. So there.
Well, wait a minute. They just said that they had increased sales and lower sales. Okay.
What they're saying is they believe that they need the extra text in their picture to help with their sales. But what they've noticed recently is their sales are decreasing, and they're wondering, is it because we're demoting them in search because of the text in their picture?
Yep.
If I understood it right. So, yes, the best match algorithm does take these picture standards as part of the overall algorithm for how things are ranked. So, this is one part of the cocktail that includes price, location, other seller behavior, your history on the site, things like that, in part of the search ranking. So all things being equal, if you have non-compliant photos, you're going to be demoted compared to someone who is compliant to these picture standards. If this seller feels it's really important to keep these details, these are the type of details you need to add to the item description, even if that means adding some of these pictures to the item description and using the eBay gallery for clean photos of the item itself.
Okay, thank you. And here's another one. There's two more that'll go along the same vein. Sometimes on used items, I would like to be able to point to a problem with an arrow and mentioning it in the listing. Is that still an acceptable thing to do?
I'm glad this was asked. Yes. If you can still use a small arrow to point out important details of your item, as long as you don't add other text to it.
Perfect, thank you. Here's another one that goes along the same line. Since a stock photo cannot be used for a used item, is it permissible for sellers to copy and use photos from another seller? In this case, this person has their photos that have been copied.
Yeah, you need to ask permission for the other sellers to use their photos. You can sometimes go out on the internet, then you're using the stock photo again. Again, if it's a used item, copying someone else's pictures is kind of like having a stock photo, isn't it? It kind of defeats the purpose of what the buyers want, what you want to do to ensure that the buyers are going to be happy with the transaction and not put yourself at risk for low, negative neutral feedback, low DSRs, is to show a picture of the item for sale. If you have a multi-commodity type item, you're selling lots of them of the same type of used item. In those cases, we do allow a representative photo to be used on, for a multi-quantity type listing, but don't use a stock photo. Go through your inventory you have, find something that's representative of the items you're going to sell, and use that photo.
Okay. And then this was another. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
To Ken's point, I think it bears reiterating here. I know the purpose, I think, of asking the question is realistically trying to get away with doing as little work as possible. That's a great concept for business because you do want to be efficient, but always think from the buyer's end. Is the picture you're showing exactly what you're selling? And if it's not, don't use it. A used item may have one scratch that the stock photo isn't showing. You're setting yourself up for return, item not described, and possible negative feedback.
Very true. Now, speaking of stock photos, somebody else sells a lot of brand new items, the same one over and over. What do you think about using stock photos in that case?
Yeah, stock photos are great for brand new items.
Okay. I'm trying to scan to see what stuff will go. This person says they've seen eBay listings where the main photo is broken into 4 different shots. Is that over marketing?
No, you can still use collage type pictures. What we're asking is that you don't put borders or lines to that collage or logos. Don't add logos and things like that. But if you want to show multiple angles of your item in a collage type format, that's fine.
Okay. And what's the best way to protect your photos from other people borrowing them?
A watermark. You can use, we have, if you use the eBay new photo uploader, it gives you a feature to add a watermark right in the flow, and eBay will add it for you. If you want to add your own before you upload it, just follow those guidelines. Make sure that, the best thing is just to use your eBay user ID. Make sure it's at least 50% transparent and in a very neutral color, usually gray or a soft white work best. And place it on the image in such a way that it won't cover an important detail of the image, but will still protect your intellectual property of that picture.
Okay, and Ken, just to clarify, using a watermark that follows your orders, your information, or using a collage photo, neither of those will cause Best Match to have a problem with the photo. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Great, thanks.
Kat, did you see any new questions that would be good for Ken?
I saw lots of them. For Ken, not so much. For Griff, mostly.
Okay. Well, no, I have more for this. I just want to answer. I have to type in one more question, so go ahead and ask one while I find this one.
This is a real simple one. Does anybody know where to find the photo settings on an iPhone 4S? Real easy one, I hope.
I don't have one, but if you go to the camera settings and then push whatever the menu key is normally, you should see it. So just open the camera, and Cheryl's doing it now. I have an Android phone. I don't have an iPhone. So. And
we could say that, RTM, like you usually say, but I'll also second your opinion going to YouTube and typing in, how do I find the camera settings on my iPhone 4S? You'd be surprised what you'll find. Yeah. So thank you, Cheryl.
There's not a single question in the world that isn't answered on the interweb. It's amazing.
Google is your friend. Did you? Oh, by the way.
Well, I sometimes I'll debate that. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I got that answered.
Got it. Go
ahead, Kat. You can ask another one.
How do you take pictures involving glass? We talked about mirrors, but they were asking about glass items that reflect so much. And I also I saw several questions about, is it okay to put a piece of tissue paper or something like that inside the glassware? So we'll put all those into one question for you.
Sure, yeah. You can put a piece of tissue paper in. I think that shows someone who's experimenting, trying to get the right photo. Here's a general rule of thumb. Glass is hard because of its nature. It's translucent and at the same time reflects light back. I've tried various things for various different types of glass. And I find that, for example, if I want to photograph something that's faceted glass, I love taking it against a black velvet background. But I change my lighting. So instead of having all diffused light, I will position a tiny spot, usually above and to the left or right of the piece of glass, to send just enough direct light so it hits the facets of the cut glass surface. This is also good for rings, for example, faceted diamond or stone rings. and looking for specific ways that throws a tiny little hot spot back, because that's what shows you the brilliance of the glass itself. So sometimes just using diffused light with glass won't work. If it's not a faceted or cut glass, if it's just smooth glass, say it's a set of wine goblets, you can find that they'll work just as well in front of a white or black background, but your direct light trick still will work, but may need to be repositioned. But with glass, it's getting that balance between lighting the item's actual mass and taking advantage of the fact that the glass surface can reflect in a very pleasant way, if used in moderation, a direct one or two spots. And when I say spots, I'm just saying maybe it's a little tungsten bulb in a lamp that you're holding above or positioned above the item itself. Again, the key here is experimentation, but you'll find that in some cases, depending on the color and quality of the glass, white will work just as well, if not better than black.
Thank you. We're going to try to wrap this up for you guys because I know you all need to get back to doing other things.
You guys have been awesome. I want to assure you that the questions that we didn't get to, Karen has them. She's our question lady. And we'll send a list of those that we didn't get answered over to the team at eBay, and we'll see if we can get those answered for you. If we do get that document put together, it'll be posted on the same page as the replay, and that is pagemage.com/TRSW. We also have a top-rated seller webinar channel on YouTube. I want to express our appreciation to the eBay team, especially to Griff and Ken, the presenters, and Cheryl, who seemed to run interference all over the place, and all the others. Those of you who enjoyed the webinar, we would love to have you comment on our Facebook group. That's facebook.com/groups/top-rated seller webinars. Come join us there. We will be sending out a newsletter with a link to the replay, and we will see you then very, very soon. Thanks again for attending another Top Rated Seller webinar. Please don't lose touch with us. We've got more good stuff coming up soon. Sign up for the newsletter so you don't miss anything. And we will see you all around at the Facebook group, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Thanks again. Bye-bye.